The late afternoon sun poured over the quiet rural road, turning the asphalt into molten ribbons that shimmered in the heat. Maya Johnson walked home from school, her small backpack bouncing against her shoulders, the straps frayed at the edges from years of use. She adjusted the weight of the books inside, but her attention was drawn to the sight of a gleaming red Shelby GT500 Mustang parked awkwardly on the roadside. Its hood was up, wide and demanding like a mouth in mid-scream. A man, sharply dressed in a suit so expensive it could have bought a house in their neighborhood twice over, circled the car, phone pressed to his ear. His gestures were frantic, hands slicing the air as he muttered into the device. Maya stopped a few steps back, cautious. Her Aunt Renee had drilled into her not to talk to strangers, especially those who looked so clearly out of place in their small, predominantly black community 2 hours outside Boston. But something in the man's frustration, the tension radiating off him like heat, made her hesitate. "Excuse me, sir," she called softly, her voice barely more than a whisper over the hum of cicadas in the fields. "Do you need some help with your car?" The man froze mid-step. Andrew Whitaker, CEO of Whitaker Enterprises, a man whose name was whispered with a mix of envy and awe in Boston boardrooms, turned toward her. His expression shifted from irritation to mild condescension when he took in the sight of her. A small girl with colorful braids, faded denim shorts, and an oversized MIT t-shirt that hung off her frame like a tent. "That's very kind of you, sweetheart," he said, his tone patronizing. "But this is a high-performance vehicle. I need a real mechanic." Maya's eyes didn't flicker. She stepped closer, letting the backpack thump to the ground. "My uncle has a garage. He's been teaching me about engines since I could walk. I can at least take a look." Andrew opened his mouth to protest, but she was already leaning under the hood, moving with surprising confidence. Her hands, small and precise, began to probe the engine, her brows furrowing slightly as she examined the tangle of metal and wiring. "When did the problem start?" she asked, her voice steady, almost professional. Andrew exhaled, realizing he had little to lose. "About 40 minutes ago. The engine started overheating, then it just died." "Did you smell anything unusual? Sweet like syrup?" Maya's head tilted, eyes narrowing thoughtfully. "Yes, coolant." "There's a leak. Right here." She pointed to a small puddle beneath the car, barely noticeable to the untrained eye. "It's the radiator hose. It'll hold for now, but you'll need to top off the water." Andrew's gaze lingered on her, curiosity sharpening. There was something familiar about the way she focused, the intensity in her eyes as she worked methodically. "What's your name?" he asked suddenly. Maya Johnson." She extended her hand, streaked with grease. Andrew shook it cautiously, a strange mix of intrigue and disbelief swirling in his chest. "I'm Andrew Whitaker," he said. "Nice to meet you." "I think I can fix this temporarily," Maya added, producing a small metal case from her backpack. "Uncle Leon makes me carry an emergency kit. You never know when someone might need help on the road." Minutes passed as she worked, tape and tools moving with deft precision. Andrew watched, captivated, as the girl brought life back to the car. Then, almost absent-mindedly, Maya brushed her hair away from her face, and that's when he saw it. A ring, antique gold with a deep emerald stone, secured by thread around her slender finger. The sunlight caught the stone, illuminating a small crescent-shaped flaw he knew anywhere. Andrew's world tilted. That ring. He had given it 12 years ago to a little girl named Maya, at an orphanage called Little Angels, days before it mysteriously closed. He felt his voice tremble. "It's unusual," he whispered. Maya looked down, the shadow of sadness crossing her young face. "It was my mother's adoptive mother, Diana. She died last year. She said it was a symbol of an important promise." Andrew swallowed hard. "Do you know where she got it?" "She never told me exactly. Just that it belonged to someone special and that one day I would understand its meaning. The road, the Mustang, the heat, none of it mattered anymore." Andrew offered to drive her home. She hesitated, then nodded. During the 15-minute ride, he asked casually, though his grip on the wheel tightened with every answer, about her life, school, and family. "I live with my Aunt Renee and Uncle Leon. They took me in when Diana passed," Maya explained. "Have you always lived here?" "Since I was 3. Before that." Her voice faltered. "I was at Little Angels. It closed shortly after." Andrew's pulse raced. "Little Angels? Are you sure?" "Yes, why?" He drew a breath. "I knew it. a long time ago. The house she returned to was modest yet tidy, walls lined with the warmth of family and history. Maya thanked him, but before stepping out, he pressed a card into her hand. "If you ever need anything and anything at all, call me." Maya accepted, curious, her fingers brushing over the emerald stone. She ran toward the house, unaware that this encounter had set in motion a chain of events that would unravel secrets kept for over a decade. A billion-dollar empire, a mysteriously closed orphanage, and a girl whose extraordinary abilities could no longer remain hidden. Andrew returned to Boston. Sleepless nights spent staring at enlarged photographs of the ring. The child he once promised to return to had found her way to him, and with her the promise he never kept. He reviewed documents strewn across his office desk, bank transfers, adoption records, and a circled name, Maya Johnson. Special case. Meanwhile, Maya's workshop behind her aunt and uncle's house became a sanctuary. Tools lined the walls, the smell of oil and grease familiar and comforting. She worked meticulously, restoring a 1950s radio to life. Uncle Leon watched her, pride etched in every line of his face. "You have a gift, girl. I've never seen anyone understand machines like you." Maya twirled her ring thoughtfully. "I met a rich man the other day. His car broke down and I fixed it. He recognized my ring." Leon froze, exchanging a glance with Renee, who had appeared silently at the door. "Maya, dear," Renee said, tense. "Remember when we promised to tell you the truth about Diana when you were older? That time has come." That night, Maya learned the hidden story. How Diana, a nurse at the orphanage, had run away with her when Little Angels abruptly closed, changing identities, living in quiet fear for years. Renee handed her a yellowed envelope, a letter from her mother, meant only for this moment. "My dear Maya," she read aloud, voice trembling. "If you are reading this, someone has found you. There are things you need to know." Meanwhile, Andrew's private investigator reported updates. Diana's death under suspicious circumstances, missing adoption records, and a trail of irregularities pointing to children with unusual talents. His world, meticulously built on control and wealth, began to crack under the weight of secrets. Back in her workshop, Maya continued to tinker, unaware of the storm gathering beyond the walls of her home. Her hands, steady and confident, moved over the machinery, the same hands that had just touched a world of hidden power and forgotten promises. The sun set outside, the workshop bathed in the warm glow of lamps, the hum of small motors and the click of tools echoing through the room. For Maya, the night was peaceful. The calm before the inevitable revelation that would link her past, her gift, and the empire that once seemed untouchable. As darkness fell, the stage was set, a girl with an emerald ring, a wealthy man desperate to understand her, and a secret that would bridge the gap between innocence and power, between truth and the shadowy corners of a forgotten orphanage. The first act of the story ended not with resolution, but with anticipation, each heartbeat echoing the promise of revelations yet to come. Maya, unaware, smiled faintly as she polished a small brass gear, a quiet guardian of a world she was only beginning to understand. And somewhere in Boston, Andrew Whitaker stared at the ring under magnification. Memories of a promise he had failed to keep flooding back, realizing that the smallest hands could hold the greatest truths, and that the course of his empire, and perhaps his own redemption, was about to change forever. The morning air carried a chill that hinted at the coming autumn, but in Boston the warmth of early sunlight reflected off glass towers, dazzling and sharp. Andrew Whitaker sat in his office, the skyline sprawling before him, but his eyes were locked on the photographs and documents strewn across his mahogany desk. The image of the emerald ring gleamed under the lamplight, small but undeniable, a bridge to a past he had tried to bury. The memory of the road, the heat, and the small figure of Maya Johnson crouched over the Mustang's engine haunted him. The way she had moved, confident and unassuming, had left an imprint that no wealth, no empire, no carefully curated lifestyle could erase. Yet beneath the awe there was a creeping unease. How had this child survived, thrived, and kept the ring? And why had the Little Angels orphanage disappeared so completely? His private investigator, Ramirez, had spent sleepless nights following leads, piecing together fragments of a story Andrew had only glimpsed. The adoption records were irregular, the bank transfers suspicious, and the children listed as special cases seemed to vanish from history. But now, finally, a pattern was emerging, one that implicated more than just administrative negligence. Ramirez's voice cracked through the speakerphone. "Sir, I found Diana Johnson's accident report from last year. Brakes failed. Suspicious circumstances. The official adoption files for Maya Johnson are missing. Completely gone. She never existed, at least on paper, at Little Angels. But she did, and someone protected her. Someone went out of their way." Andrew's jaw tightened. The enormity of the situation weighed on him. "Find everything. Every record. Every person connected to Little Angels. Every transaction my father made during that period." He paused, running a hand over his face. "I want to know what the hell happened to her, Ramirez." Meanwhile, 2 hours from Boston, Maya Johnson moved through her workshop behind her aunt and uncle's house. The small space smelled of oil, grease, and the faint perfume of old wood, a sanctuary where machines could be repaired and nothing judged her. She held the 1950s radio in her hands, reconnecting wires with patient precision, the sound of her small tools echoing in the warm room. Uncle Leon approached, wiping his hands on a rag. "Did you manage it?" "I did," Maya said, lifting the radio. "Just had to reconnect a few wires. Nothing fancy." Leon studied her, pride etched into his lined face. "You have a gift, girl. I've never seen anyone handle machines the way you do." Maya twirled the emerald ring absent-mindedly. "I met a rich man the other day. His car broke down and I fixed it. He recognized my ring." Leon's face went pale. He exchanged a glance with Renee, who had appeared silently at the doorway. "What man?" Leon whispered. "Andrew Whitaker," Maya said. "He gave me his card. He seemed strange when he saw my ring." Renee's eyes filled with tension. "Maya, dear, remember when we promised to tell you the truth about your mother when you were older?" Her voice trembled slightly. "I think that time has come." That evening, Maya sat cross-legged on the worn rug, a yellowed envelope resting in her lap. Renee's words echoed in her mind as she tore it open, revealing a letter in Diana Johnson's careful handwriting. "My dear Maya, if you are reading this, someone has found you. There are truths you need to understand about who you are and the world you live in." The letter spoke of escape, of hiding, of lives lived in shadows. Diana had been a nurse at Little Angels, a caretaker in a world designed to exploit children. When the orphanage closed abruptly, she had fled with Maya in her arms, changing their names, moving quietly from town to town, always looking over their shoulders. But the letter also hinted at the broader injustice. Little Angels was not merely an orphanage. It was a place where talent and intelligence were exploited, but only selectively. Certain children, often from marginalized communities, were assessed, ranked, and redirected. Those without the connections, without the social standing, were discarded, forgotten, left to survive in a world structured against them. Maya's heart clenched. She had always known her life was different, that her abilities were remarkable, but she had never understood the scale of what had been done to children like her. The systemic discrimination, the calculated neglect, and the societal biases that had allowed people like her to be treated as expendable, now they made sense. She looked at the ring again. The emerald stone wasn't just a piece of jewelry. It was a talisman, a reminder, and now, potentially, a key to the truths hidden for over a decade. Back in Boston, Andrew sifted through financial records and old corporate files. The more he discovered, the more he realized how deeply his father, Howard Whitaker, had engineered the system. Children at Little Angels weren't just adopted or relocated because of circumstance. They were selected for abilities, intelligence, and sometimes racial or social markers. The orphanage's closure had been sudden, deliberate, a move that erased inconvenient truths. Andrew's fingers drummed the desk. He recalled the casual confidence of Maya as she fixed his car. She had no formal training, yet she operated with the assurance of someone who had seen the inner workings of machines intimately. He thought of the subtle but powerful prejudices she must have faced every day, the quiet, systemic assumptions that a young black girl in rural Massachusetts could never match the abilities of the world's elite. Yet here she was, not just surviving but excelling. He realized something. This wasn't just about mechanics or a stolen ring. It was about potential, misused and hidden, and the forces that had attempted to suppress it. Meanwhile, Maya and her uncle discussed the practicalities of her daily life. Leon had been her teacher, mentor, and shield. But he too acknowledged the wider world of barriers she would face. "You know, Maya," he said, eyes meeting hers, "people will underestimate you. Not because you're not capable, but because of who you are. They'll assume, they'll judge, they'll place limits. Don't let them." Maya nodded, feeling the weight of the past and the challenge of the future. Her hands moved over the radio, a tiny piece of resistance in a world that tried to confine her. Across the city, Howard Whitaker had arrived without notice at his son's office. His presence was commanding, intimidating. "Why are we revisiting these old Little Angels documents?" he demanded, voice echoing off the polished walls. "That matter is closed. We have Project Horizon to focus on. Billions at stake." Andrew's jaw tightened. "Dad, I found her." Maya Johnson, the girl with the emerald ring. Howard laughed, sharp and hollow. "So what, just another orphan? You think this changes anything?" Andrew felt a surge of anger and frustration, but also a strange resolve. "This girl, she's special. She fixes things. Machines, system, people. That's why she mattered. That's why the orphanage mattered." Howard's gaze hardened. "Children are valuable. Talents can be harnessed, shaped. Some can be molded for greater purposes. You think you understand the world, Andrew, but you don't." Andrew's hand rested on the pile of files. "I understand enough to know that what you and the company did, it was wrong. Exploiting children, favoring some because of race, background, or convenience. That ends now." Meanwhile, Maya's workshop became a focal point of preparation. She repaired, examined, and organized, but she also thought, planned, and strategized. Her world had expanded from machines to systems, from repair to justice. Every turn of a wrench, every adjustment became symbolic of the changes she wanted to see, not just in machines, but in life itself. Her hands, small and dexterous, adjusted gears, replaced fuses, and tightened screws with precision. But her mind, fierce and intelligent, connected patterns in ways that would have confounded even seasoned investigators. Leon watched silently, aware that the young girl before him carried more than talent. She carried the legacy of generations denied opportunity, the intelligence to perceive systemic wrongs, and the courage to challenge them. Outside, the world continued unaware. The affluent city, the corporate towers, the invisible lines of privilege and exclusion, they all persisted. But within the walls of that small workshop, a seed had been planted, one that would grow to challenge and dismantle those invisible barriers. At night, Maya read Diana's letter once more, absorbing every word. It was a blueprint of the past, yes, but also a roadmap for the future. It spoke of courage, ingenuity, and resistance, not just in surviving, but in confronting injustice. And it acknowledged the insidious nature of prejudice, the way it could invisibly thread through institutions, decisions, and people, shaping lives without ever being seen. Maya understood. Her world was small, her body young, but her mind was vast. She could see the injustices that had touched her life and the lives of children like her, and now, equipped with the knowledge from her mother's words, the emerald ring, and her extraordinary talent, she was ready to act. She did not yet know the dangers that awaited, the powerful men who would stop at nothing to protect secrets, the entrenched biases that would fight her at every turn, but she felt something else too, determination. A quiet, unshakable certainty that what was broken could be repaired, and what was hidden could be revealed. As the moon rose over the quiet rural street, Maya Johnson stood at the threshold of her workshop, ring glinting faintly in the light. Outside, the night was still, but the air hummed with possibility. For the first time, the past, the present, and the future aligned in a way that whispered of justice, revelation, and the extraordinary journey that lay ahead. Somewhere in Boston, Andrew Whitaker stared at his father's files again, thinking of Maya, thinking of the roads she had walked, the obstacles she had overcome, and the quiet brilliance of her mind. He understood now that she was more than a child who fixed cars. She was a force, a spark capable of illuminating even the darkest corners of privilege, secrecy, and prejudice. And so the second act of the story ended with tension and anticipation. The threads of the past had been drawn together, the injustices of the system recognized, and the young girl at the center of it all prepared to step fully into her destiny. For Maya Johnson, the journey was only beginning. The revelation of truth, the confrontation with corruption, and the challenge of a world structured to overlook children like her were still ahead. But she was ready, and she was not alone. The stage was set, a child with an extraordinary gift, a ring that held secrets, and a world that would soon be forced to reckon with the consequences of its own design. The city lights of Boston shimmered against the night sky, but inside the towering glass walls of Whitaker Enterprises, the air was thick with tension. Andrew Whitaker stood at the edge of the executive floor, the weight of decades of deception pressing on his shoulders. He had spent countless sleepless nights connecting threads, missing records, suspicious transfers, and now, finally, a face to the long-hidden story. Maya Johnson had shown him the proof. The emerald ring had been more than a family heirloom. It contained a storage device that documented every injustice, every exploitation carried out under the guise of corporate and social order. It was both a key and a revelation. And now Andrew understood the full scale of what Howard Whitaker had orchestrated. Howard Whitaker, Andrew's father, stormed into the room without warning, his presence commanding immediate attention. The Senior Whitaker had built his empire on secrecy, cunning, and exploitation, and he had never imagined that the past could catch up so swiftly. "Andrew!" Howard barked, slamming his hand on the polished table. "Why are we digging up the past? Project Horizon is the future. Billions are at stake. Stop this madness." Andrew met his father's gaze, his calm exterior belying the storm inside. "The past isn't past, Dad. Not when it's still shaping lives, destroying futures, and exploiting the most vulnerable." Howard scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping him. "You sound like a child. The world works this way, Andrew. Power, talent, and money. They are to be used. What's the harm in shaping the future?" "Shaping the future?" Andrew repeated, voice low but firm. "You call it shaping. I call it control. Children were manipulated, their talents exploited, their lives stolen from them because of race, background, or circumstance, and you thought no one would notice." Howard's face darkened, but he remained silent. Andrew turned to the document spread across the table, then to the screen showing security footage from Little Angel's orphanage. Images of children, their faces bright with potential, many of whom had vanished without a trace. Among them, a young Diana Johnson clutching a small child in her arms, fleeing into the night. "That child," Andrew whispered, "is Maya, and she survived what you tried to erase." Across town, Maya's workshop was quiet but alive with purpose. She meticulously sorted through files and equipment, each action a meditation on her journey so far. Uncle Leon and Aunt Renee watched from the doorway, their faces a mix of pride and worry. "Do you understand what you're doing?" Leon asked softly. Maya didn't look up. "I do. They've hidden the truth for too long. They've judged children like me because of who we are, who our parents were, the color of our skin. They think that gives them the right to control our lives." Renee placed a hand on her shoulder. "And now?" "Now," Maya said, voice steady, "we fix it. Not just for me, but for all the children who never had a voice." In the Whitaker boardroom, Howard finally broke his silence, leaning forward with a predatory glint in his eyes. "And you think a 10-year-old girl can change anything? A mere child? You underestimate what I've built." Andrew met his father's gaze unflinchingly. "It's not just about a child, Dad. It's about truth. It's about justice. And it's about exposing what you've been hiding all these years." At that moment, the doors swung open and Maya stepped in, flanked by Uncle Leon and a man with a professional camera, Marcus Hayes, a reporter from the Boston Globe. The room fell silent. Maya's small frame seemed almost fragile, but the determination in her eyes made it clear she was no ordinary child. Howard's lips twisted in disbelief. This is the girl? The prodigy? Project 17? Maya's gaze did not waver. "Yes. And you thought you could erase me, erase what my mother and so many others built. But truth cannot be hidden forever." With steady hands, Maya opened the ring, revealing the hidden storage device. "This," she said, holding it out, "contains all the records, all the evidence of little angels, of the children you exploited, of the documents you falsified. Everything. And it's already being broadcast live." Marcus nodded, gesturing toward the camera. "Over 10,000 people are watching right now, Social media, news feeds, live streams. The world is watching. Howard's face drained of color. The empire he had built, meticulously constructed over decades, was crumbling in real time. He looked to Andrew, seeking some semblance of control. Andrew, this is insane. You know the law, the contracts, the secrecy. One call, and all of this disappears. Andrew shook his head, his expression a mixture of resolve and disappointment. No, Dad. Some things cannot be hidden. Not anymore. Federal agents, who had been quietly waiting outside, entered the room, moving quickly to detain Howard Whitaker. The arrogance and entitlement that had been his trademark now seemed pitiful, a relic of a man who had believed himself untouchable. As Howard was led away, Maya approached, her gaze calm and unwavering. My mother taught me that broken machines can be fixed, but broken systems need to be rebuilt. I hope you get that chance even in prison. Days later, Boston buzzed with the fallout. Whitaker Enterprises' stock plummeted as investigations revealed decades of unethical practices, illegal experimentation on children, and systematic corruption. Andrew, once heir to a tainted fortune, had sacrificed wealth for integrity, investing everything in the Prometheus initiative, a program dedicated to nurturing talented children from marginalized communities, without exploitation or secrecy. Maya's workshop became the Johnson Center for Young Inventors, a sprawling complex built on the very land where Little Angels once stood. The center was alive with activity, young minds tinkering, creating, and dreaming. Here, talent was nurtured, not exploited, and diversity was celebrated, not marginalized. Maya, now 15, moved through the center with the ease of someone born to lead, her hands adept at identifying and fixing complex systems, her mind sharp with insight. Andrew watched her, marveling at her growth, recognizing that she had become more than a prodigy. She had become a symbol of change. 5 years, he said softly to himself, observing the young inventors. 5 years, and she's done more than I ever could. On the walls of the Johnson Center, exhibits told the full story. Photographs of Little Angels, newspaper clippings, of Whitaker Enterprises' fall, and the headline that changed everything. Whitaker Empire collapses after teenager exposes corporate malfeasance. The legacy of corruption was documented, but so was the triumph of justice, resilience, and courage. Maya, standing before a group of young inventors, addressed them with a poise that belied her years. When I was 10, I fixed a stranger's car on the side of the road. That small act of help set in motion a chain of events that changed lives, exposed secrets, and challenged a system designed to ignore children like us. Remember, talent is not just skill, it's responsibility. And every act of courage, no matter how small, can change the world. The audience listened, rapt, many of them children who had faced systemic prejudice, now inspired by someone who understood the weight of their potential. Meanwhile, in federal prison, Howard Whitaker confronted a reality he could not manipulate. His empire gone, his reputation tarnished, and his influence shattered. Once a man who believed that wealth and power could control outcomes, he was now confined to walls that mirrored the ethical boundaries he had long ignored. Victoria Whitaker, his daughter who had renounced her family name, reached out to Andrew and Maya. She provided leads on other orphanages with similar programs to Little Angels, enabling the Prometheus initiative to expand its reach and protect dozens more children from exploitation. Maya read the letter aloud to Andrew, Uncle Leon, and Aunt Renee, her voice steady. Thanks to the evidence and the courage to speak truth, 37 more children have been identified, nurtured, and protected. Their talents, like mine, can now flourish without fear. Andrew smiled, feeling the weight of relief and purpose. You've transformed not just your own life, Maya, but the lives of countless others. And in doing so, you've given me a second chance. To rebuild with integrity, to help, not exploit. The Johnson Center's graduation ceremony celebrated 12 young inventors from marginalized communities who had completed intensive training. Each had a scholarship, a job offer, or mentorship lined up. Maya, still too young to formally, Graduate was already a mentor, guiding others with empathy, intelligence, and experience far beyond her years. Broken machines can be fixed, she said in her speech, but broken systems need to be rebuilt from the ground up. And that is what we are doing here, building something entirely new, where every child's talent can shine, where no one is judged by color or background, and where courage and integrity are valued above all. The Johnson Center became a beacon, a symbol of justice, resilience, and transformation. The ashes of corruption gave rise to opportunity. The shadows of exploitation were replaced with light. And at its heart, Maya Johnson, small in stature, but vast in influence, stood as a reminder that extraordinary change could come from the most unexpected places. The world outside continued its chaos and routine, but within these walls, a revolution of hope, fairness, and vision had taken root. And every child who walked through the Johnson Center's doors knew this. Their potential was limitless, their talent cherished, and their voice heard. Andrew watched from the back, the city skyline glittering behind him. Real power, he murmured, isn't in buildings, accounts, or influence. It's in the ability to make a difference. And as the sun set over Boston, casting long shadows across streets and towers, a new era began, not of empires built on exploitation, but of communities empowered, lives transformed, and futures reclaimed. Maya Johnson's journey, from the side of a rural road to the center of a movement, had shown the world that courage, integrity, and talent could not only challenge the past but also shape a just and equitable future. The emerald ring, once a secret, now gleamed as a symbol of truth, resilience, and the extraordinary power of one child to rewrite history. The morning sun filtered through the tall glass windows of the Johnson Center for Young Inventors, throwing golden patterns across the polished floor. Maya Johnson moved quietly through the corridor, listening to the sound of children's laughter echoing from the classrooms. 5 years had passed since she had stood in the Whitaker boardroom and revealed the truth that brought down an empire. 5 years since the night she had watched her adoptive mother's name finally cleared. The world outside still talked about the scandal, but for Maya the noise had turned into purpose. Every beam of this building carried a story that had begun on a cracked country road, beside a broken Mustang. She paused in front of a wall-sized photograph of Diana Johnson. Her mother's smile seemed alive in the picture, warm and steady, reminding Maya of the nights they used to fix old radios on the kitchen table. Beneath the photo, a small brass plate read, "For those who refuse to stay silent." Maya reached out and touched the edge of the frame. "We did it, Mom," she whispered. "We really did." A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Andrew Whitaker stood by the door holding 2 paper cups of coffee. He looked older now, lines around his eyes, a streak of silver in his hair. But there was a calmness about him that hadn't been there before. "You still talk to her, huh?" he said with a gentle smile. "Every day," Maya replied, taking a cup. "It helps me remember why this place exists," Andrew nodded. "You've turned this center into something extraordinary. When I first imagined redemption, I didn't think it could look like this." Maya smiled. "Redemption isn't a word you buy, Andrew. You earn it, one day at a time." Outside, the city was waking up. Cars hummed along the streets. The harbor shimmered in morning light, and a new banner hung over the front gates. "Every talent deserves a chance." Students arrived from every corner of Boston, kids of all colors and backgrounds, each carrying the same spark Maya once carried inside her. Curiosity mixed with the need to prove the world wrong. She walked beside Andrew through the main hall, greeting students, checking on projects, answering questions. In the engineering lab, a young girl showed her a miniature solar engine that powered a water pump. "That's brilliant," Maya said, crouching down. "You know, I started with a radiator hose once. Small things grow into big things." The girl grinned, unaware that the woman encouraging her had once exposed one of the largest corporate crimes in the country. To these children, Maya wasn't a symbol of scandal. She was proof that brilliance could come from anywhere, even from a forgotten orphanage. As the day went on, reporters and donors began arriving for the center's 5th anniversary celebration. The local news station set up cameras near the entrance. For Boston, this wasn't just another event. It was a reminder that something beautiful could rise from the wreckage of greed. Andrew watched the preparations quietly, his thoughts wandering to the past, to his father, to the empire that had been built on exploitation. He had testified against Howard Whitaker, handed over every document, every bank record. The verdict had been swift. Howard had died in prison a year later, unrepentant to the end. The news had barely mentioned it, but for Andrew it had been the closing of a wound. When the ceremony began, Maya stood on the stage beneath the same emerald ring light she once used to expose her enemies. The crowd fell silent as she began to speak. 5 years ago, she said, her voice steady, this land was a place of silence. Children here were taught that their voices didn't matter, that their gifts were dangerous. But look around you now, listen. This silence has become music. Applause rippled through the audience. Andrew felt something tighten in his chest. Pride mixed with humility. Maya continued, this center exists because people chose to believe that broken systems can be rebuilt. It exists because people chose courage over comfort. Her words carried through the hall, through the cameras, through the hearts of everyone watching on TV. For many in Boston, Maya Johnson wasn't just a young inventor. She was a symbol that America's wounds, its racial divides, its injustices could heal through knowledge, compassion, and shared purpose. After the ceremony, as the guests mingled, Maya slipped away to the rooftop garden. The city stretched before her like a sea of possibilities. Andrew found her there, leaning on the railing, the wind playing with her braids. You always escape after speeches, he said. I don't like cameras, she replied. They turn people into stories instead of letting them be human. He nodded slowly. Maybe stories are how humans remember. Sometimes, she said, but sometimes stories are cages too. People remember the scandal, the fall of Whitaker Enterprises, but they forget the children. They forget why we fought in the first place. They'll remember, Andrew said quietly. You made sure of that. Maya turned to him, studying his face. You've changed more than anyone I know, he chuckled. When you lose everything, you learn what actually matters. I thought I was building a dynasty. Turns out it was a prison. You built this place with me, she said. That counts. He smiled faintly. Maybe this is what my father never understood. Real power isn't control. It's service. For a long moment, they both stood in silence, watching the sunset stain the skyline orange and gold. Somewhere below, the laughter of students echoed like distant music. Maya's phone buzzed in her pocket. It was an email notification from Victoria Whitaker, Andrew's estranged sister, now a federal prosecutor. The subject line read, New Developments, Little Angels Network. Maya opened it, eyes scanning quickly. Her heart began to pound. Andrew, she said, voice trembling slightly. There were more orphanages. He frowned. What do you mean? She found 5 more institutions linked to the same project. Different names, same funding routes. They kept going even after Little Angels shut down. Andrew's jaw tightened. My father's partners. Maya looked up from the screen, her determination hardening. We have to stop them. The night grew cold as Maya and Andrew sat inside her office, the glow of the city reflecting off the glass walls. Files, flash drives, and old reports covered the desk like the debris of a storm. The email from Victoria was open on the monitor. Maya scrolled through the attachments. Spreadsheets of transactions, fake charity names, photos of orphanages in Texas, Ohio, and Florida. Each had the same eerie logo hidden in a corner, a pair of angel wings inside a circle. They called it the New Light Initiative, Maya said quietly. Different names, same monsters. Andrew's face hardened. They learned from the fallout. Buried the paper trail deeper. They didn't count on us finding it, she replied. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she pulled up cross-references. Look, these shell companies still receive federal grants meant for minority-run educational programs. They've been laundering money through scholarships that don't even exist. Andrew leaned closer. That's billions. And they're using race as camouflage. Maya's stomach tightened. That's the cruelty of it. Pretending to help the kids they're exploiting. For a long time, the only sound was the hum of computers and the ticking of the old wall clock. Maya remembered being one of those children, her brown skin marking her as less than, her silence mistaken for gratitude. She'd sworn she'd never let it happen again. When Andrew finally spoke, his voice was low, steady. If we go after them, we're reopening everything. The press, the threats may be worse, I know, Maya said. But if we don't, then what was all this for? She gestured toward the building outside, the laughter of children drifting faintly through the vents. Andrew sighed. Then we do it right. No leaks, no speeches. We gather proof, we hit them in court. Maya nodded. I'll call Victoria in the morning. She can open an investigation under federal jurisdiction. But morning brought news neither of them expected. At 7:12 a.m., Maya's phone rang. Victoria's voice came through the line, shaken but controlled. "Maya, someone broke into my apartment last night. They didn't take anything. Just left a message." "What kind of message?" There was a pause. A note on my mirror. It said, "Stop digging or you'll bury yourselves." Maya's chest tightened. "Are you safe?" "I'm fine," Victoria said. "But they know we're coming." By noon, the center was swarming with reporters. Someone had leaked a false story claiming Maya's foundation was under investigation for fraud, a classic smear tactic. Parents were calling in panic. Sponsors hesitated to answer emails. Andrew walked into Maya's office holding a newspaper. "They're using your name the same way they used mine once." She took the paper from him, her face calm despite the storm. "Then we'll use the truth the same way I did before." They worked all day and deep into the night. Victoria sent encrypted files from D.C. Andrew tracked down the remaining board members of the Whitaker Group. Piece by piece, they mapped a hidden empire, a web of men who'd once controlled entire communities through philanthropy, men who still believed race and poverty were tools for profit. At 2 a.m., Maya sat back, rubbing her temples. "They built this system to survive exposure," she said. "Every time one head falls, two more appear." Andrew looked at her, the fatigue in his eyes matching hers. "Then maybe we stop chasing heads. Maybe we burn the root." "What do you mean?" "I mean, instead of taking down one organization at a time, we destroy the entire mechanism that funds them. The grants, the shell corporations, the banks." Maya frowned. "That's impossible without federal access." He smiled slightly. "Unless someone still has an old Whitaker clearance badge." She blinked. "You kept it?" He nodded. "It's been collecting dust. But it can still open the secure servers my father used for global transactions. If we can pull the ledgers and tie them to the New Light initiative, we'll have the evidence we need." Maya hesitated. "That could expose you too. You'll be admitting you had access all along." Andrew's expression didn't change. "I'm done hiding from guilt. If that's the price, I'll pay it." The next evening, they drove out to the abandoned Whitaker Research Complex on the outskirts of the city. The place had been shuttered since the trial. Windows boarded, the parking lot cracked with weeds. The night wind carried the faint smell of salt and rust from the harbor. "This is where it all started," Andrew murmured. "Then let's finish it here," Maya said. Inside, dust floated through the beam of Maya's flashlight. They made their way down the corridor to a reinforced door labeled Server Vault. Andrew swiped his badge. The red light turned green with a soft click. Rows of silent machines blinked awake as he powered them on. Maya connected her laptop. "We'll need to mirror everything before they detect us." Andrew typed in a long string of codes. "We'll have less than 10 minutes before the network flags an external access." Data cascaded across the screen. Thousands of files, offshore accounts, donation lists. Then Maya froze. One document was marked Children AF Data Archive. She opened it. Photographs appeared, rows of faces, names, medical charts. Some of the children were smiling. Others looked terrified. Her voice broke. "Oh God." They experimented on them. Andrew's hand gripped the desk. "These are the missing kids. The ones the state never found." Maya's eyes filled with tears. "We can't just leak this. It has to go through proper channels." "I know," he said, "but we need to get out first." Suddenly a low hum echoed through the room, the power system shifting. The exit lights flickered. Then the door slammed shut behind them, locking automatically. Maya's pulse jumped. "Andrew?" He tried the panel. "Someone just triggered the lockdown. Remote access?" He nodded grimly. "They're watching us!" The server fans roared louder. On the monitor, a message flashed in bold red letters. "You should have stayed silent." The air in the server vault turned heavy with heat. The hum of the machines grew louder, like the place itself was breathing. Maya's laptop screen pulsed with warnings. "System override detected." Andrew moved to the wall panel, prying it open with a metal rod. "They're trying to fry the evidence," he said. Maya began copying the files onto an external drive. "We have to finish the transfer before they wipe it." A new message appeared on the monitor, this one colder, more personal. "Walk away, Maya Johnson. This is bigger than you." She stared at it for a moment, jaw tightening. "They still think fear is enough to stop me." Andrew pulled a circuit breaker. Sparks burst in the dark. They don't know you like I do. For a few seconds, the servers flickered, then stabilized. The download bar inched forward, 60%, 70%, 85%. Then the building's main power went out, plunging them into darkness. Maya's heartbeat filled her ears. Backup generator? Andrew shook his head. Offline. We've got 2 minutes before the battery dies. Maya crouched by her laptop, whispering a prayer she didn't even know she remembered. The bar crawled toward 100%. A single line of green text appeared. Transfer complete. She yanked the drive from the port, slipped it into her pocket, and grabbed Andrew's hand. Let's move. They ran down the dark hallway, flashlights slicing through clouds of dust. Somewhere behind them, footsteps echoed, measured, deliberate. Andrew turned. A shadow moved across the corridor. Someone's here, he hissed. They ducked into a maintenance tunnel that led toward the loading bay. The metal grates rattled under their feet. At the far end, moonlight poured through a broken window. Maya climbed first, pushing herself up onto the ledge, then turned to help Andrew. A voice called out from the darkness behind them. You don't know what you've done. Maya froze. The voice was calm, commanding, a female. From the shadows stepped a tall woman in a gray trench coat, her face half hidden beneath the brim of a hat. Who are you? Maya demanded. The woman smiled faintly. Someone who once believed in your mother. Andrew's eyes narrowed. You worked for Project Prometheus. I was Project Prometheus, the woman said. At least before it was twisted. She stepped closer, her boots echoing on the concrete. You think exposing this will fix anything? It'll just bury thousands more. The public will turn away. They always do. Maya shook her head. No, they won't this time. You're naive, the woman replied. Power doesn't fall. It mutates. Then I'll keep fighting every version of it, Maya said. Even if it takes my whole life. The woman studied her for a long moment, then sighed. You sound just like Diana, Maya's breath caught. You knew my mother? She worked for me once, the woman said quietly. She believed Prometheus could change the world, until she realized what Howard Whitaker really wanted. Andrew stepped forward. You let them use those children. You let them die. The woman's face hardened. I tried to stop it. But Howard owned everything, the labs, the scientists, the government contracts. When I refused to continue, he erased me. I've been running ever since. Maya's voice trembled with anger. Then help us finish what she started. The woman looked at her, torn between guilt and hope. I can't undo the past, but I can show you where it ends. She handed Maya a small black keycard. This opens a vault under Whitaker Memorial Hospital. That's where the original Prometheus files are stored, every experiment, every name. Why tell us this now? Andrew asked. Because, she said, they'll come for you tonight. Once that data hits the federal servers, you'll both be targets. A siren wailed somewhere in the distance. Police or security, Maya couldn't tell. The woman stepped back into the shadows. You want justice, Maya? Then go finish your mother's work. Burn it all. Then she was gone. Maya and Andrew exchanged a look, fear, exhaustion, determination, and climbed out through the broken window into the night. The harbor wind hit their faces as they stumbled onto the empty docks. Behind them, the Whitaker complex stood silent, a ghost of its former power. Andrew leaned against a crate, catching his breath. You think she was telling the truth? Maya nodded slowly. Everything in her eyes said yes. She glanced down at the keycard. Whitaker Memorial. That's where it ends. The next morning before sunrise, they reached the hospital, abandoned since a fire in the 1990s. The front doors hung crooked. The sign faded with time. Inside, the smell of ash and mildew clung to the walls. This place looks dead, Andrew said. Good, Maya replied. Dead places don't lie. They followed the old elevator shaft down into the basement, flashlights sweeping across cracked tiles and rusted equipment. At the far end of a corridor was a reinforced door. Authorized personnel only. Maya slid the keycard through the reader. The lock clicked. The vault beyond looked like a tomb. Rows of file cabinets lined the walls, each marked with codes. In the center stood a glass chamber containing a single server still running on an independent power source. Maya approached it slowly. The monitor came to life with her touch. A password prompt appeared. Andrew stepped beside her. Try her name. Maya typed Diana. The screen blinked, then opened a directory titled Prometheus Genome Trials. What they found inside froze them both. Hundreds of files detailing genetic mapping experiments, tests designed to manipulate cognitive ability in children from minority backgrounds. The project had claimed to enhance learning potential, but the truth was horrifying. Forced trials, chemical exposure, memory suppression. Maya's hand trembled. They used us like lab rats. Andrew's eyes filled with tears. My father, he knew all of it. They all did, Maya said softly, and they called it progress. She stared at the monitor, then pulled the drive from her pocket. We leak everything. Not to the media, to the world. Open source. No more secrets, Andrew hesitated. That means once it's out, you can't take it back. I don't want to, she said. Let the truth speak. She began the upload. The files streamed upward into the global network. The names, the data, the crimes, and all becoming public in real time. As the final file uploaded, the monitor flashed a new message. Transfer complete. And then, for the first time in her life, Maya felt free. But outside, the world was already shifting. By nightfall, every major news outlet had the story. Protesters flooded the streets, demanding justice for the children of Prometheus. Federal agents raided corporate offices across 3 states. Some of the men behind the project were arrested. Others disappeared. The Whitaker name, once associated with power, now stood for corruption. Yet even as the system trembled, Maya couldn't rest. Something still felt unfinished. A question that wouldn't let her sleep. Who started Prometheus in the first place? That answer was waiting for her in one final envelope that arrived at her doorstep the next morning. It had no return address, only her name written in neat handwriting. Inside was a single photograph. A young Diana Johnson shaking hands with a government scientist. On the back, a message was written in ink. They were never working alone. Maya sat alone in her apartment, the city outside still humming with sirens and chants. The protests had not stopped since dawn. News anchors repeated her name on every channel, calling her the whistleblower who burned an empire. But Maya wasn't watching. Her eyes were fixed on the photograph that had arrived in the envelope. Her mother, Diana Johnson, smiling beside a man in a white lab coat. Andrew entered quietly, setting a cup of tea on the table. You haven't slept, he said. I can't, Maya whispered. I keep thinking about this picture. He glanced at it, frowning. You think that's the scientist who started Prometheus? Maya nodded. I ran his face through an old federal database. His name was Dr. Charles Lanning. He worked for the Department of Defense. He wasn't part of Whitaker Industries, he was their supplier. Prometheus didn't start in a lab. It started in the government. Andrew sank into the chair across from her, disbelief shadowing his face. You're saying this wasn't just a corporate crime. It was policy, she said quietly. They were testing racial bias as a biological variable. They wanted to create a system where intelligence could be controlled. My mother signed on thinking it was a program for gifted kids, until she realized what they were really doing. Andrew's voice broke. And they killed her for it. Maya's throat tightened. No, they erased her. The accident wasn't an accident. They made it look like one. The room fell silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. Outside, protesters' voices rose again, a chant echoing through the streets. No more silence. No more lies. Maya looked out the window, her reflection overlaying the chaos below. She tried to stop it, Andrew. She tried to protect us. And now I know what I have to do. He looked at her warily. What are you planning? Maya stood, her resolve crystallizing. Prometheus wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something worse, something still alive. And if we don't expose it now, they'll rebuild it under another name. Andrew reached for her arm. You can't fight the government, Maya. She turned, eyes fierce. Then I'll fight the lie. He saw the fire in her, the same fire that had brought the truth out of ashes 5 years ago. He realized there was no stopping her, only walking beside her. That night, they met Victoria in a small cafe outside D.C. The city was crawling with agents and reporters, but in that dim light it felt almost peaceful. Victoria slid a small encrypted tablet across the table. You didn't get this from me, she said, but it's everything you're looking for. Congressional memos, defense budgets, internal communications. Prometheus was a military prototype disguised as education reform. Maya scrolled through the files, her stomach turning as she read. They used minority children to model neurological adaptability. for drone control systems. Andrew exhaled slowly. God, Victoria's voice softened. Maya, releasing this will make you the most wanted person in America. Maya didn't flinch. Then they'll have to chase the truth. Victoria smiled sadly. You sound like your mother. When Maya left the cafe, the night air felt electric, full of danger and possibility. She could almost hear Diana's voice in the wind, calm and steady. Do it right, Maya, do it brave. By the next morning, the files were online. The headlines hit like thunder. Government linked to Prometheus experiments. Evidence points to decades of racial manipulation research. The country erupted. Congressional hearings were announced within hours. Federal officials denied everything, but the documents spoke louder than any denial could. Across America, people marched, not just for the children lost, but for every community that had been silenced, every name forgotten. And in the center of it all stood Maya Johnson, a woman who had turned grief into justice. For days, she avoided interviews, choosing instead to stay at the Johnson Center, where the laughter of children still echoed through the halls. But one afternoon, as she walked through the main lobby, she noticed something new, a mural the students had painted overnight. It showed a young black woman holding a torch surrounded by children of every color. Beneath it were words written in bright paint. Truth is not revenge, it's the beginning of healing. Maya stopped, her eyes filling. She realized that even though the system she had fought was monstrous, the people who believed in change were greater still. Andrew approached quietly. They're calling this the Maya Doctrine, he said with a smile. Schools all over the country are adding ethics and science programs because of what you did. She laughed softly, wiping her tears. I never wanted a doctrine, just a world where kids don't grow up being experiments. He looked at her with quiet admiration. You built that world, one brick at a time. As they stood there, the evening light poured through the glass ceiling, turning everything gold. The center buzzed with life. Children running, teachers smiling, voices rising like music. For the first time in a long while, Maya felt peace. Still, she carried the photograph of her mother everywhere. Some nights she'd sit on the rooftop garden, watching the city lights shimmer across the harbor and whisper, We finished it. Mom, we stopped them. And in the soft hum of the wind, she always imagined hearing a reply, calm, proud, eternal. You didn't just stop them. Maya, you changed the story. 6 months later, a memorial was unveiled at the site of the old Whitaker complex. The plaque bore no corporate logos, no grand speeches, just names. Hundreds of children's names etched in steel. Maya stood beside Andrew and Victoria, surrounded by a crowd that spanned every race, every background. As the sun dipped below the horizon, she placed a single white lily at the base of the monument. Reporters waited for a statement, but Maya said nothing. She simply looked up at the engraved words above the names. They were silenced by greed but remembered by truth. Then she turned away, walking down the hill as the crowd began to applaud. The wind caught her coat, lifting it like wings. For the first time, she didn't feel haunted. She felt whole, because this time the story didn't end in darkness. It ended in light, the kind her mother always believed in.